So if you're just joining us, welcome. We are here with the Clink Different Academy. We're excited about this webinar. It's a chance into the discussion of our young growers, our new growers, and really our next gen is what we call them, next generation. So our topic here, as you can see, the pioneering work, because that's really what it is. It's kind of groundbreaking work for this new generation of wine growers. And of course, looking ahead. We know that we're in the midst of harvest, so we'll touch on that part too, of course, looking ahead right now, but also to the future. So let's go ahead and get a little bit of the housekeeping out of the way. Alexa, we'll let everyone, oh, no, let's go back, there we go. Just letting you know that the webinar is going to be recorded, and really this is for the main purpose that those that are signed up, that are running late, that couldn't join on the beginning of it, they'll have a chance to go back and listen. Friends of yours can listen. It'll be recorded for future use. So we just want to alert you, that's the important part of this. Now we'll just move to the next slide here. And before we get too far down, I'll explain the whole Clink Different Academy, because I think sometimes the panelists, especially coming from Germany and Bordeaux, don't realize what this is in terms of the US market. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. But the last little bit of housekeeping is, we know you're going to have some questions, and we welcome those questions, but we would love for you to put them in the chat. Please don't use the Q&A. We'll use the chat and we'll make them live. We'll keep them running. Our amazing winemakers, panelists, experts that are with us, they're going to do their best to answer those questions in real time. Now, we'll have a dedicated section at the end as well. That'll be more of our live question. You'll be putting those in and I'll ask live right there on the spot. But this is your way to connect with them in that moment. So please go ahead and let's get that started. Alexa, I know we have a practice session here. So for everyone to get started with our chat, with your questions going into the chat, go ahead and take a stab at what aspect is most important to next gen producers. That's our fun practice question. Wonderful. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide. Before I introduce our experts here, I'd love to just make sure everyone that's here with us today understands this incredible Clink Different Academy. So it's made possible by the EU financing. And believe it or not, it seems kind of uncommon to pick both Germany and Bordeaux. Bordeaux is the largest region in France. It's kind of the size of Germany in terms of the scope. But if you think about it, all the production is non-competing in the sense that Bordeaux is really about blends, very different grapes than what we find in Germany. We have a focus on styles in Bordeaux. We all think of the red, but there's incredible white, rosé, Cremant. And in Germany, we obviously think of white. And a lot of times it's the off-dry version with Riesling running the show. But we have such an incredible array of the Burgundian grapes, if you will, Pinot Blanc, Pinot Gris. There's Chardonnay, even, of course, Pinot Noir is the red, Limburger, Rosé, Sparkling. So you get the point. There's a lot of production that we want to draw attention to, and it's non-competing. So that's how this whole program came about for the US market. Now, to welcome our panelists here. I'm so excited to have these panelists with us. Daisy Sichel, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself of Chateau d'Angleterre and tell everyone, how you fit into this next gen piece of the puzzle.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Laura. So it's a pleasure to be here tonight. So I'm Daisy Sichel. I work for Chateau Angleterre. Chateau Angleterre is our family property. My grandparents bought it in 1961. And the very special thing about Angleterre is that every one of the family grew up at Angleterre. So it's a very special place for us. I'm working in the commercial side of the property. My uncle Benjamin is actually the winemaker, and we all work together. So it's a wonderful place. It's located on the Margaux appellation in the Médoc area. And we have 30 hectares of vines planted in one block in front of the chateau. And this is the case since the 17th century, which has been a long time here. So the goal is, of course, to produce the best quality wine possible, and also to preserve this wonderful terroir. This is why we work with biodynamic practices since almost 20 years now.
Fantastic. And just one little tidbit to add. When did your family take this property over?
In 1961.
Great.
This is when my grandparents bought the property.
Fantastic. Thank you, Daisy. Glad to have you with us. Now, you can see Sarah Simone pictured here. She's with Domaine de Saint-Amand, and she's not able to connect. Sadly, this is one of our tech glitches. So we're hoping to maybe still weave her in via the phone, but we've been unsuccessful. She's in the cardiac zone. So we're hoping that she can join us. Just to let you know a little bit about Sarah, she grew up in Saint-Emilion zone. So wine has kind of pulsed through her veins for quite some time. But the fun twist about Sarah is that this is kind of a second career for her. She's closer to 50. And so she kind of laughs that everyone calls her, the next gen, because they usually refer to the next gen as like the younger generation. But we want to draw your attention to next gen is just those that are kind of embarking with wine currently. And if I'm correct in remembering, she really began this process back in 2018. So it's very fresh for her. It would be such a treat if we could get her on, but if not, we will hope to bring her on throughout this. So I'll keep moving forward here. Josephine Schlumberger of Weingut Schlumberger, welcome, and tell us a little bit about you and how you fit into the puzzle.
Hi guys, I'm happy to be here and I hope everyone can hear us. Yeah, you found quite an old picture of me. See, I'm Josephine. I grew up on our family winery in the very southern part of Germany. It's called Baden, and it's almost next to Switzerland and France. So I have 20 minutes actually only to France. So probably Daisy is not much far away than Jens is to me. And yeah, I grew up in between the vineyards and the cellar, kind of. My family is running this winery, I don't know for how long now. We are pretty small. We have 6 hectares, which is just enough for us to work there. We have no foreign workers with us. We just have some young people who we teach. And yeah, I just joined the winery last October. So for me, actually, this is the very first harvest. I'm like completely back at home, not alone in church, but in church as well, working with my parents. So yeah, we are kind of in a challenging movement process right now, and thinking over many different things. So it's kind of a really interesting talk for me today as well.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to have you with us. Now we'll move forward. Jens Windisch, he is with Weingut Werder Windisch. Jens, welcome.
Hi there. I very welcome all of you to this webinar. I'm Jens from the Weingut Werder Windisch. We are located in the middle of Germany, in Rheinhessen. The village is called Mommenheim, and we're about 40 kilometers next to Frankfurt. I grew up like Josephine in a family business and took over in 2010. I'm studied and educated winemaker. We do like 14 hectares of vines, mostly white wine, dry white wines with a focus on Riesling and Pinot Blanc, a bit of Silvaner. Yeah, do organic winemaking. I'm very focused on the vineyard, on handcraft, and yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you so much. And I love to point this out. He's our token male. That doesn't happen very often. So sorry, Jens, I had to just kind of push a button there because it's super fun to see all these amazing ladies coming in the picture. And I think what we'll do is we'll move on. I'll just tell you, if we had Sarah here, she would also tell you that her estate is really small. She's only 3 hectares. So it's it would be wonderful to have her. Maybe she'll still be able to pop in, but you know, all of these approaches, it's fun because the estate sizes vary. So our agenda here, we are going to pull this information out of our incredible panelists. We're really wanting to ask them a little bit, the first point on the agenda, how do you preserve your heritage? And by that we mean, you know, what is the most pressing focus right now? And that kind of ties into the future goals too. So we're touching on both of this. They'll kind of give this in their own words, and they all have different takes, similar veins, but different takes. Then we're going to move to the tools that they use to achieve their future progress. And then we're going to talk about the wine styles and what they're doing in terms of creating their own signature, their unique brand, if you will, or if that is kind of status quo from what's been in existence with their previous generations. Of course, we mentioned we'd have that dedicated question and answer session. Obviously, we won't be able to see you, so feel free to use the chat and say hello, ask questions. Again, the panelists will answer those questions in real time too. So as we move forward here, this is the question. How do you preserve your heritage? So Daisy, I'll turn it over to you and let's hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, well, so how do I preserve my heritage? It's actually a family legacy. So for us, it's very important to work all together. Of course, the biodynamy, the way to treat the vines is very important. But also all the ecosystem that we have at Angludé. As I was telling you, we have the vineyard in one block in front of the chateau, and we have a wonderful environment because all around the vineyard, there's a forest. So we actually have a lot of biodiversity, which will help us to preserve everything that we have. The other thing will be the fact that the family lives on the property. So we actually make sure that everything will be preserved as we want. So my grandmother is still living there. A lot of my uncles, we're actually 15 people living there all year round. So it's a big place, but it's something that we really want to preserve and that we really want to work together on.
Thank you. Now, I'll just move to Josephine. Tell us here how you are working to preserve your heritage.
I think that's it's a really big question, especially for people like us who grow up on a winery, and kind of it was a topic in all of our childhood. So for me, first I have to say that I'm really happy that my parents never forced me in. Like, if you grow up on a family business like that, it's often the case that the parents kind of push you to take over, push you to come in so you can preserve the family history. And I'm really, really happy that my parents didn't do that. And it was my free decision to go into winemaking after I did something else. So right now I'm in, and I'm 100% in because I wanted to be there where I am now. So what we do now is just like find a way to move forward with the winery to the future, which is actually not as easy as it sounds, especially when you're like as small as we are. And I don't want to change like too much because I kind of like things how they are, but still you have to find ways to be able to make it in the future, not only with the nature, like with the climatic change topics, we will come back to this later probably, but also economically, like it's not so easy to live from 6 hectares of vineyards in Germany. So yeah, we have to discuss a lot right now and have to find our personal way to go to the future, because that's something that's really important to me, that like I don't want to be like an anonymous business. Like I don't want to have like this recipe of that's how you get rich, or I don't know. I just want to find the way for our winery, for our family, for me, that works for us. So a very personal way to preserve what my grandparents, my grandparents did, and just bring to the future.
Fantastic. And I'm going to move to Jens, and then we see Sarah. We'll come back to you and we'll let you introduce yourself. So hold tight. We'll come to Jens and let you tell us your thoughts, Jens.
Yeah, I think the heritage is a very big one, and generations before had the same problems like we have now, and it's a lot of points, but the two most important for me is on the one side our vineyards and our soils, and on the other side the business. So first to the vineyard, organic production was the only way for me personally to produce wine and to get healthy soils, which I can give to the next generations after me, and they can earn grapes from them. So having a look at nature, at climate change, healthy soils to grow our vines. And on the other side, we have to see that it's not just fun; it's a business, and we want to live from that. So it's very important for me to get a good contact to partners, to restaurants, shops, importers, which is part of my family then, and part of our business, that we make fair businesses and pay our workers well and pay ourselves well too. And so these 2 points, on the one side, the good business, like Josephine told, we don't want to get rich and have 5 cars, but we want to run a business, and we want healthy grapes and healthy soils. These are the 2 points.
Thank you. Now, Sarah, we want to welcome you. I gave a quick little introduction and teased everyone with the fact that you kind of poke fun that you're not really the next gen, you are closer to 50, but I think it's amazing that you just really jumped into this very recently, and that you have a small 3-hectare property. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you fit into the next gen puzzle.
Okay, first I do apologize for my late coming to the seminar. I was able to see you, to hear you, but I couldn't participate. It was so angry. Yes, I can't answer the question, how do you preserve your heritage? Of course, because I don't have heritage. I have to build my own heritage. Yes, I took over this magnificent 3-hectare estate in 2018. So this is just the beginning of my adventure, of course. And for me, my goal or my objective is first to make this small domain profitable, of course. And while succeeding in introducing environmental practices, I am currently in organic conversion. Yes.
Fantastic. Wonderful. So I think, did I get everything right that you heard in the beginning as I was talking about you? I mean, tell us a little bit about, you grew up in Saint-Emilion, but you're now in Cadillac. Tell us a
Yes.
little bit about your history.
Yes, of course. Yes, I grew up in Saint-Emilion. My parents still live there. For me, it's like a dream. When I was a child, I followed my father. I followed my father. He was a stone cutter. He rebuilt houses, chateaux from Saint-Emilion. So it was like a dream. I grew up around all these prestigious crus. Unfortunately, I couldn't afford to invest in Saint-Emilion or such appellation. And I was looking for a terroir, what we call the terroir, the most quality possible terroir. And I do discover the Garonne River. I come from the Dordogne River, but I do discover the Garonne River. And I was in love of this small appellation, and I am on the coteau of Garonne. So it's a beautiful view. And of course, I have really, really qualitative soils. So with my customer and my visitors, I want them to forget the appellation and more to concentrate on the potential of the terroir. Yes, this is my own challenge. I hope I will succeed in doing it.
Wonderful. So you kind of led me to this. That's your most pressing focus, I know you mentioned. I'm going to swing back and have Daisy and Josephine and Jens tell us in your words in just a quick moment, what is your most pressing focus right now?
At the moment, the harvest. I mean, we're in the end of harvest at the moment, but that's the most important time of the year. We're working 1 year for this point, and it's a lot about eating grapes, visiting vineyards, a lot of decisions within minutes. A great time.
Fantastic. And then Daisy, I'll have you jump in.
Yeah, well, for the harvest, we actually finished the tonight. Well, actually a couple of hours ago. So yeah, we are very, very happy. We've been quite worried, especially with the weather that we had. It's been raining a lot. It's been a very cool vintage. So we were worried, but we've been able to wait for the perfect maturity. So of course it will be a fresh and fruity wine, but I'm sure it will be a wonderful vintage. So we just have to wait until it's all vinified and aged to tell you that exactly. But it's yeah, we're very happy to. It's finally over and everything is in the vat, so we're happy and relieved.
Wonderful. And Josephine, what is your most pressing issue right now?
Yeah, I cannot say harvest now as well. Like it's for me, it's actually similar to Daisy. We kind of finished mostly yesterday. We have like one small vineyard still outside with Chasselas Gutedel, where we hope to let them ripe in the sun for a few more days. But we are almost done, which is good. And like this harvest and the whole year showed me like besides of harvest, my most pressing focus right now and the thing I kind of think about the most right now is actually climate change. Like this year was crazy. It was actually a pretty hard year to have a first year in the winery. It was a pretty hard year or hard harvest as well. Like Jens said, it was like crazy decisions we have to take like every day, and it was a really challenging year because it was really wet and cold and completely different to the last years. And that's something I kind of try to get my mind around, like these switching climatic or like different weather phases in the different years. Like we have these really hot years and we have these really cold years, and like that's something I think about right now a lot. Like on this side, how can we work with that? How can we make sure we have good quality every year? doesn't matter what the weather is. And then, of course, as well, how can we find a way to have our impact on the climate change, like as small as possible. So that's actually something I like, especially also after harvest, I want to discuss more with my family and want to think about more.
Fantastic. Thank you. Now, we know that harvest is pressing, but we'll move forward for our next big question here on the agenda. So I'm so curious about what tools are the most critical, the most important to you in terms of kind of achieving the success that you're aiming for. Obviously, that kind of involves what is a pressing issue and what you're working against, but the tools that you use to kind of help you move forward. And so I think we'll come back and we'll go in our order now. We've got Daisy, we'll have you head us off again if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. So I think that the tool that is the most important for us at Angleday will probably be the plants. The plants that we are working with to bring a lot of stuff in the soil, to bring the biodiversity and the life in the soil and in the environment. All of that is so important. For example, we plant a lot of radish, red clovers to bring some nitrogen to the soil. We also planted some fruit trees in 2017. So this is quite new, but it's starting to have a fruit. So like peaches, apples. It's wonderful. So we also build something with these fruit trees because we hope that it will become a natural home for bats in a few years from now. The bats, which are just a natural pesticide, they can eat about 1,000 insects in an hour. So they fly very low, and it's actually pretty convenient for us in the vineyard.
Fantastic. I love that insight. Thank you. Now, Josephine, we will pop over to you and have you tell us.
Not Sarah.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes, we can pop Sarah in. Absolutely.
So, of course, like Daisy, I use such type of tools, but in my personal situation, I have no past. I have no past, I have no familial heritage. So I use every tools I have at my disposal, but human tools. I think this is the most important for me. Human tools, I mean, I have personal, private advisors in the vineyard and in the wine cellar, of course. I do not hesitate to join as a group of wine growers. For example, I join a group. We gather once a month for the organic conversion, but also in my appellation, in my syndicat, Cadillac Côte de Bordeaux, I joined the promotion commission. It helps me to meet other wine growers and to exchange on each subject. They show me how they do, and at last, I think about this question a lot, and I think that the most important tool for me is myself. I mean, I participate to at each level in my vineyard, in the vineyard, in the cellar, in the cell, and this is the best way to learn quick for me.
Fantastic. And, I love to hear this connection with collaboration and that many around you are working together. And it just feels like it's going to be a bigger movement, a faster pathway to progress with everyone working together as a team. So even though you're so new at this, I love to hear that they're embracing that and pull you in and you utilize each other. So thank you, as well as yourself as the most important tool. I love it. Now, let's come back to Josephine. Tell us about what your most important tool is here.
Yeah, right now actually I'm kind of looking for it. So right now for me the most important tool is actually the discussion with my parents about what we want for the winery in the future and how we can achieve it. Then also with friends of mine, with mentors, with people I worked for, the wineries I worked for in the last years, and just like with as many people I can get to discuss with me the different hard decisions we have to make in the future, and to learn more about different views on the situation right now, and also to maybe discuss different ideas people already tried out. And trying out and learning is for me right now really important. And just I have the feeling that right now no one really knows what the future will bring, like climate wise, and people are everyone is in the wine business kind of looking for ways to manage heat or years like that, like this one. So I think it's really important, as Sarah said, that we like all stand together and talk about it and find ways together to fight climate crisis, and also find ways to work with a changing climate system.
Wonderful, thank you. Now, Jens, we'll have you conclude this kind of topic here.
For me, the tools to have future success is network, learning from colleagues all over the world. I'm very glad being able to work on the Southern Hemisphere, for example, in 2007, and learned there a lot, which I could use the last years here in Germany, because climate change is a very hard thing. When I summarize the years from 2006, my first vintage, up to now, it's so crazy. There are very cold years, very early ones, very hot vintages, and we can get more success when we work together with the colleagues, like neighbors, like in Germany and like all over the world. Talking to professionals all over the world, and trying to understand nature, being open-minded, use your eyes, use your mouth. So asking yourself every day, is it a good decision? How are the wines aging, for example? How are the vines outside in the vineyard react on the weather, the things we are doing? So always being open-minded and network, talk to others, what's their idea.
Great, such a valuable tool to network and learn, and again, try to create faster progress in terms of movement forward. So now, before we move to our next topic, I'd love to just touch on, I know that there's got to be quite a few that are curious about your thoughts with this vintage. Now, I mean, we saw all kinds of coverage. I was lucky to be not only in Bordeaux, but Germany this year, and the weather was just crazy. It's been, in my opinion, just watching from the outside, it has been a very challenging vintage. So I'm sure that you're going to back that up, but I'm curious, this is a kind of twist on that. Is there anything positive that came out of this challenge of this year that is so diametrically opposed to the last years? Like anything that you learned in terms of battling the tough weather? I know some of you are still in the midst of harvest. Daisy just finished, but is there anything positive you gained out of it? Because we hear so much about the challenge. Daisy, I'll have you go first if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, it's exactly what we were talking about with my uncle this afternoon. So I told you that since the year 2000, we started slowly to go to biodynamy. So biodynamy is part of the big philosophy of the family, and with complex climatic conditions, this is something that we feel okay for the vines. So I'm trying to explain it. I will try to explain it a bit more clearly. But since we take care of nature, we actually see that the vines are much more resistant to every kind of diseases of the frost. The vines got the ability to just shut down and just turn off for a few days and then go back on its normal cycle. So when I was telling you about the harvest and telling that it's been, yes, a complex vintage, but what we seen about the vines is that they were able to to just adapt, and this is wonderful to see. It's been the coolest and the rainiest vintage since I think the last vintage that was like this was 1997. So to be able to get something out of it with a good quality, it's so nice. We're very proud of the vines right now, very proud of the vineyards. I'm so proud of my uncle that have been able to just preserve all of that and worked so hard on the vineyards. After the frost, after the 3 weeks frost that we had, we thought that we lost it all, but no, the vines were still there, fighting, and no, it was so we're very happy. This is why it's kind of a relief, and this is why actually I just poured a glass of wine. So yeah, cheers to that.
Yay, fantastic. I know you deserve it. Wonderful. All right, so then I guess, Sarah, we'll pop to you and just tell us your thoughts. Is there, with all the challenges, anything positive you gleaned from this?
Yes, everything is positive. I can't, I have no choice, of course, but now yes, this year I learned humility. You know, I am 50 years old. Maybe you think when you are 50 that you can control everything, but no, not at all. So, so you learn no, and like Daisy, my harvest is correct in quality and quantity. No, it's
Wow, that's fantastic news. Great to hear. Okay, good. That's awesome to hear the positive. Josephine, we'll have you come on and tell us.
Actually, there were like many positive things as well. Like we had enough rain this year, so our soils are wet enough to probably survive next year when it's going to be dry maybe again. So that was good. And then actually for me, like I love fruity and fresh wines and wines with a lower alcohol level, which is actually not so easy to produce in the very southern part of Germany anymore. So in the last years, I was a little bit worried how we can still make these fruity and fresh wines in the future, not getting too high of sugar levels. So we didn't have this problem. So the wines we have in the cellar right now, they are fresh, they are fruity. And what we learned as well, especially maybe my dad, was that the really cool thing about being such a small winery is that you can just let it be. Like we don't have to produce wines that are like the same every year. We can just take the grapes we get, make the best out of it. Like we had a great harvesting team outside. Like the guys and girls outside did an awesome job, and it was really hard. Like we had they had to turn around every single grape, picking out the best grapes to come home and leaving the rest in the vineyards. So it was tough and it took a lot of time, but they made it, and they made a great job. So what is inside us now is really good. And what we learn as well as just to find a way, and we will learn to find a way to say to our customers, okay, like the last maybe 2 or 3 years were a little bit heavier, a little bit like more alcohol, and this vintage is really fruity and fresh, and it's good that it's that way. Like every vintage has its own character, and that's something I think the whole wine industry needs to learn.
I agree. I love that. Thank you for pointing that out. That is a positive. All right, Jens, let us know what you discovered with all the challenges this last vintage. And you may still be in the midst of it. I'm not sure where you are with vintage.
We are in the last third, so middle of next week, beginning of next week, we should be finished, and then it's only some sweet wines. One of the important things for me as a winemaker, the very top end of our wines. I mean, the year was very hard for us. We're doing organic winemaking, and the summer was quite hard. In organization, all the vineyard work, getting healthy grapes. We have 20 to 25% less of grapes to average year. So in total, this harvest gave us back a lot because we got really good weather. It was a completely other challenge than the years before because we're 4 to 6 weeks later than in the last years with our harvest. But that's great because that's the normal thing I learned about 10 years ago in my interns and while studying. So we're back to normal again, and I'm really happy about that. So in the end, quality is perfect, and that's the most important. Don't think about what was before. So yeah, in total, it's all great. Don't think about the months before. Think about what's in the class.
Thank you for sharing some of that positivity. We needed to hear that because it was a pressing question I was so curious about for you all. Now that kind of leads us into our next big bucket list here. We'll go ahead and talk a little bit, taking all these vintage variations and juxtaposed opposites, if you will. Are your wine styles shifting? I love it. Daisy, we'll let you lead us off.
It's a tricky question. It's of course it's shifting a bit. But it started when my uncle took back the estate and the production. Of course, there's the same DNA of my grandfather, but not the same. And I think what we always want to do is to improve in quality. So now what we're looking to do is to work on the purity of the fruit. But this goes with all the family philosophy, all the viticultural philosophy. It's very important that we go back on the most important thing, the grapes. This is why we do some very light pumping overs. This is why we don't want to extract as much as my grandfather did. This is why we use amphoras for the aging. We now have 30% of our wine aging in amphoras and 70% in barrels. But we don't use the same barrel makers. We don't use the same toast. And I think it's just an improvement in the quality of the wine. The climate is changing a lot, so of course we need to adapt. Because I see that someone asked a question if we are able to do something to reduce the impact of the global warming on the vineyard. This is impossible. We work with nature, so we get the weather that we get. What we can do is to make sure that the vines can adapt. So this is through different solutions. So for us, our solution was the ecosystem, the balance of the biodiversity, everything that we have around. Of course, everything will evolve. And this is mainly because of maybe the global warming and the wines that we've been able to do. I think Josephine was talking about the fact that we want to produce different vintages and different personalities of wines every year. This is very important. We never want something, a cool and rainy vintage like this year to be as concentrate as the wine and the vintage that we produced last year. This is impossible. And we don't want to do it. We really want to preserve everything that the nature gave us. So I think it's not shifting, it's an evolution. Yeah, that's my final answer.
Wonderful. I love the way you framed that. So thank you. It was a really clear picture. Now, let's have Sarah, you get to pop in and tell us your thoughts. And I know you're new and you're young at this, but think about your preference, what you want your signature style to be. And is that maybe shifting from the historical context?
Yes, you know, when I started, 3 years ago, I was so sad. I felt so sad to hear so many critics about Bordeaux wines, about my region, because I was so proud of living there. I heard that wines were too expensive, they were too oaky, they were too extracted, they were too standardized, all the same wines. And so what I want to show or to propose are wines that are wines which have a strong personality, which are fruity, which are fresh and not all the same. We can use the oak with different way. Like Daisy said, this is not different. This is just an evolution, a different way of using tools in the cellars. That's why I try to make.
Thank you. I love it. And it's just so fun to hear your thoughts, because I know that you're still creating an identity for yourself and you obviously have thoughts in mind of where you're going. Plus you're battling that historical signature link to not only where you grew up, but now where you are with your estate. So very interesting to hear. Thank you. Now, Josephine, we'll have you come in and tell us your thoughts.
Yeah, the question about the wine styles is always an interesting one. And I think Daisy had like a really good point saying it's especially in wineries like ours, like small family businesses, not industrial wine producers. It's always more like evolution than like wine style shifting. But what I kind of see with our customers and also with myself, that people love the fruitier wines, the more wines that you can drink easily, not as high in alcohol, which is actually kind of challenging in the last years to produce wines like that. But that's what we are going for in our basic segment of our wines. Like we want to have single variety wines, which is maybe a big difference between Germany and Bordeaux. Actually, like actually all of our wines are only made of one variety. We don't have we have one cuvée, but almost none. So we kind of try to focus on the variety and make the wine taste like the variety in the basis segment, and produce wines you can drink like easily every day. And then the premium segment, that's like kind of my playground right now. I love to experiment there, and what I noticed is that people are getting more interested in special wines and then maybe a little bit funky wines and wines that are made differently. So we are experimenting with all methods right now, with pet nut style, with more of a Maceration carbonique, and different styles to just like experiment a little and to find more interesting and a little bit more funky ways to make our premium wines.
I think it's great, and especially that your clients, your customers, consumers are open to that, because that gives you the platform to dabble and to create new, an evolution, as we will use Daisy's word, into this process of shift. So very interesting.
Yeah, I love all costumers.
Yeah, that's great. Everyone should be so lucky. Jens, tell us your thoughts here.
Yeah, what I told you, took over a family business in 2010, but my parents and grandparents didn't bottle anything. So we were producers for the bulk market, did not have any directly customers. So there was not really a wine style for our winery. So I built up my own style, tried a lot, made a lot of mistakes in the beginning, and learned what my idea of our wines is, which is based on the vineyard again and the vintage. So we are not an industrial winemaking production where every year has to taste the same. It's very important for me to have an idea behind how different wine styles or different qualities should be in the end, but they can change every year a little or a bit more, because I change my idea every year a little as well. So I try to do a mixture of modern winemaking and traditional winemaking to get, in the end, with a big focus, a good quality. And I always discuss about a good quality with myself, with my workers, with my customers, and professionals all over the world. So yeah, that's the most important. Being open-minded and have good wine as a focus. And what is good, we all have to discuss for sure.
And thank goodness we all have different answers, right? If we
Yeah,
had
for
the
sure.
same answer, we wouldn't be able to get it. There wouldn't be enough supply. Perfect. Thank you so much. So now I think we'll move forward just with a little bit of detail here. These key takeaways, they're really my interpretation after listening to this amazing panel talk about what they're going through. And as I got to know them a little bit, just some of the thoughts I had here in terms of how they impact, I guess, the group as a whole, and how similar much of what they're working on has connectivity, even though some of their answers were a little different. So, just key points here that it's really critical to think about this. We're speaking with our next generation, but the decisions that they all make today will impact every generation in the future. So it's not about just now and the next, it's about all those generations. So I just thought, as I was talking to them, how fascinating it was that they're keeping that in mind as they make the decisions today. And then really enlightening to come up with a thought that collaboration was so pivotal for all of them. Collaboration locally, other growers, other colleagues, researchers, experts, that is helping them be nimble in their processes as they move forward. And I really appreciated hearing that from them, because a lot of times we feel that some of these areas are more competitive and they don't actually collaborate, but I learned that that's really the opposite. So that was a great takeaway for me. And then just hearing that nature is the greatest strategy for tackling climate change, as Daisy kind of pointed out, just really boosting the defenses within the vineyard on a natural scale is going to provide the defense. And I think it's so important to go back and not get nervous that, you know, the challenges that we saw this year, there was some talk that some growers might have to abandon producing organically simply just to, you know, save their business. But I love to hear that many growers really feel that they're going to stay steadfast in using nature and working in this way to create their defense. So there's two sides. I love to hear that though. And then in terms of style, less is more. And it's been a while since we could say that. We, as Americans too, it's always like the more the better. So just kind of seeing that everyone really feels that balance is key. The fresh, the vibrant, the captivating style right now is really the mission. And then, you know, we know that Bordeaux is really linked with blends, Germany single varietals, but that key to terroir and really holding on to it is the focal point for the quality for everyone that spoke here today. And I mean, that's no mystery, but just hearing whatever it takes to preserve the terroir, whether that's the macro version or the micro. So I think that it's really helpful just to hear that this next gen is so focused on that as well. Now, we're gonna just give you a little bit here on the next slide. I think we've got a note here. We're gonna move into our Q&A. I know we've had some questions coming in, but before we do that, let's just make sure we handle our little last bit of housekeeping in case anyone has to pop off. We'll only kind of focus on this for another 10 minutes or so. So let's move forward on the slide that's next so that we can cover that ground. Make sure everyone is aware that the seminar that's coming up next with the Clink Different Academy is October 27th. A very good friend of mine, Fernando Bateta, will be hosting that. So looking at synergy between the modern day cuisine and production across all styles. So as we spoke about the styles today, how do you link that with cuisine? Now, one little reminder here, you will receive a survey that's going to come via email, and we'd love for you to fill that out because what we're doing is not only learning from your comments, but we're also putting a couple of people from each of these seminars into the VIP session where you'll actually receive wines to taste and move forward with that. I believe that VIP seminar is going to be in November if the date still holds, and you'll be notified if you're one of the lucky winners on that. So please fill out your survey. It does shed light into us as we move forward and create new webinars, but it also is a potential chance for you to have a fun tasting seminar coming up. And I think that's it in terms of the housekeeping here. So let's open it up to Q&A. Are there any questions that we have that have come through that I might not have seen as I've been in the depths here? Anything that, panelists, anything that you saw as a question that you'd like to tackle?
Yeah, right now we had like a question about, which is pretty interesting, I think, especially in this round, about the new or different varieties that maybe will come in the future, and if people working in the wine business and retailers and importers and customers can actually have an impact on the changing wine world and an impact on what we are going to do. And I think that's a really important point, especially with changing varieties or changing wine styles and maybe new varieties, more resistant varieties, that it's like one of the most important points actually. We are like, I can only speak for me, but I would be willing to try out like new varieties. But of course, we need you guys, we need all of you to be willing to try these wines and to sell these wines. So it's always important to have everyone on board if you try to change something. So we can only produce the wines, we can change how we make the wines, and we can change the varieties we are planting. but it's pretty important that that people who are selling the wines are open-minded and try out new things as well.
That is an amazing point, Josephine, because sometimes we get pigeonholed into the wines we know, and we don't step outside the box to embrace those new experiments. So I think it's well stated. Thank you so much for pointing that out. I'm curious here, anyone else want to add anything? Or I do see another question here that says, are biodynamic growing practices making the vines more resilient? And I think that from what I hear, definitely that's the case. And Daisy, would you like to just touch on that and back us up?
So it's we see that for our vineyard, it's working very well. We only been working with this kind of method since 20 years, so it's still quite new. And the more that we do it, the more that we realize that we know nothing about wine, about the vineyard, about the climate, which is also fascinating. The way that the vines are reacting is something that we believe, and we like to think that it's the ecosystem, the biodiversity, the biodynamic treatment that helped the vines to be a bit well on their own. So they have to find what they need to survive. So we like to think that it's because of that. But yeah, I just want to go back on what Josephine said about the different grape varieties and different different types of wines that we're producing. So it's especially in Margaux, the appellation where Angloudet is a bit complicated to change the grape varieties. We are allowed to use 6 grape varieties already named by the appellation, because their goal is to preserve the terroir, is to preserve this high quality wine. But we are working on different types of other grape varieties allowed in the Margaux appellation. But it's more south of France grape varieties like Malbec and Carmenère. So we planted it last winter. So we'll actually use it in 3 years. So we'll see then. And please, if we can do this seminar again, that will be a nice question to answer. So we're trying. And we think that if we never try, we'll never know. So maybe in 3 years from now, we'll have Pinot Noir here, or I don't know, maybe something else.
I love it. Very fascinating. Well, Jens, anything you want to add?
I mean, what Daisy told us, the seminar had to be in 30 years or something that we can discuss and know what is the right thing, because no one can tell us what is going on at the moment and how fast this is all going. And there is the question if climate change opened up new wines or new varieties. And for us, for example, in my family business, my grandfather had like 1% of Riesling, and now we have over 60% of Riesling. So I am able to grow Riesling on soils and microclimates here where it was not possible 30 or 40, 50 years ago. And for example, last year we planted Riesling on a northern slope to have like an acidity safer for our Riesling wines. And the very good thing for us is that we have like in Burgundy a system like having vineyards on a circle of 10 kilometers, a lot of different soils, different microclimates, which is on the one side as a winemaker hard to have a look at all vineyards, because we do not have it all around the winery. But on the other side, we have a big puzzle in the cellar with different styles So every wine is a cuvée within the variety.
Fantastic. Really interesting to hear that. And I know that certain locations are now looking at sites that were not as priority driven historically, and they may offer the best solutions to preserving acidity when, originally they weren't deemed high quality, and now they're kind of the key to balance. So I think it's fun to remind ourselves that. Sarah, would you like to pop on and add anything here?
Yes, my situation is really different when you run a really small vineyard. You can't afford to change the grapes, or you have to be ready to stop your production during 3, 4, 5 years. So it's difficult. So for me, the first step to adapt to the change of the climate is to have more and more different parcels, and to consider them really different. It's already small, but it becomes smaller and smaller. So you harvest different at different time. I have 2 grapes, traditional grapes for the dry white, which are Sauvignon and Semillon. This year, this is the first time we harvest the Semillon before the Sauvignon. We are looking different balance. Yes, so for me, it's more to make difference with what I have than to introduce new grapes. It's from an economic point of view, it will be really difficult. And when I can improve on this way. The way is not finished. So it's my way of doing with the changing of climate.
And I think that is such an important point. And I think it echoes so many producers that I've spoken to, across Bordeaux with these newly permitted grapes, but also in Germany as well. It's what can we do in the vineyard to really harmonize what we already have? So I think that's incredible. And that also links into keeping that style and that passion for what we've been doing for so long and seeing in these areas. So I think it just comes full circle in terms of completing us and finishing us. So I think on that note, unless anyone wants to add anything, I think it's a really great stopping point. I know we didn't get to all the questions, but I really just want to thank our panelists here. Such amazing insight, taking the time out from harvest. Daisy, you just finished. We celebrate your finish here, but just want to thank you again for your time. I know it's been a little hectic as we pull these webinars together in October, not an easy time for you, but we really cherish your insight and sharing that with us so we can learn and gain a little bit more, since we're not over there as often as we'd like to be. So thank you so much for being with us today. I'll just make sure anyone have anything they'd like to add before we sign off.
Oh, I would like to thank you, because it's very, very nice to be able to talk and to explain everything that we do. Of course, we just had we're an hour, so of course it's very short. But if any of you are in the area, in the Margaux area or in Bordeaux area, I'm sure, or in Germany area, I'm sure everyone will be so happy to host you at the property.
I guess everyone will come right now. Let's all go.
Yay!
Fantastic.
Thanks, Laura, and all the people behind for organizing and having this nice time.
Thank you, Jens. And Sarah, we're so glad you finally made it and you were able to join us. And Jens, it's so fun to see that you're the token male again. I have to just say that one more poke at it for fun.
So
But I'm glad having so many women in the wine business right now. That's great.
let's say that a new generation of winemaking is female.
So fun to see. Well, thank you all again for your time. It has been fun. I've loved the discussion. It's been enlightening. I always learn from these, so it's a joy to have you. We hope you'll join us next. So thank you so much. And that's it for us today with the Clink Different Academy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
you.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.